Rise, father, please. I was your son before I became your king. If I am king.
You are king.
Thou art going to speaketh in a medieval accenteth this entire episode.
Speed run how quickly people turn it off.
Yeah, dude, we just immediately alienate everybody.
Yeah, why aren't you just like a wizard? I don't understand.
It's at the dry cleaner. My costume.
They should have dressed up like Willy Wonka.
Excalibur. That's what we're talking, guys. Why'd you pick this one?
I thought you picked it.
Did I? I might have. I don't know.
No, you know what? I think Casher wanted to do a dark fantasy kind of thing, but he's not here now, is he?
Yeah,
So
dude, he's too busy getting married like a cuck.
yeah, so
yeah, raising a family, a-hole. All right, well,
yeah, we decided to do an Arthurian legend movie, Excalibur. We could have done Monty Python and Holy Grail, but everyone does that movie, right?
I mean, it's amazing watching this. I realize how much of my knowledge of Arthurian legend comes from that movie. Like, that was my introduction to all the characters and stuff, because I would watch that VHS on repeat as a kid. We're not going to talk about that, but
we can.
But also, just as an American, like, I don't know, I didn't grow up with it as that. Sword in the Stone, the Disney movie, which I think you're a bit more ho-hum on. I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
It's fine. It's not the best, but I like it.
Yeah, it's I remember in high school we read we didn't even read the whole thing. We just read, like, I think it's broken into 4 parts. We read 1 or 2 of them. T.H. White's The Once and Future King. I don't know.
That's where my knowledge comes from. I read the whole thing in high school when I was in that AP Lit class or whatever.
Oh, okay. The whole thing.
So that's where most of my knowledge comes from. You know, we've seen 1,000 different versions in like various TV shows growing up, like parodied or just straight up adapted. That's where fantasy really, that's the core of fantasy.
In the English speaking world, yeah. Well, yeah. Which is it's this weird thing where it's like loose. It's British nationalism. It's a myth, possibly inspired by a real king, to like basically establish the divine right of king, to be like, hey, this is why you should trust the king because he's magical and he's got a good sword given to him by hot babes, but also there's like weird incest plots because it's the Middle Ages, so everything's got to be incest. I don't know. Which is really, I got really confused at the beginning with my stupid American ears because I at first I didn't hear that Uther was different than Arthur. I was hearing as Arthur. I'm like, dude, Arthur's kind of an a-hole in this movie. Like, why is it like this is a weird depiction? And then like halfway through that first chunk, I was like, oh, this is like Sauron and Saruman. I don't know. This is like a different sort of thing, different guy.
Well, yeah, I knew at least that it was Uther Pendragon in the beginning.
I did get the Pendragon, which that's another thing. I was always confused the whole Pendragon thing. I don't know. I'm famously have an aversion to monarchs, but it's really this is an ambitious film, especially for the time. You know, like it trying to basically cover the entire Arthurian legend in one film,
which is my problem with the film.
It is a problem with the film. I respect it. I think I almost appreciate it more as like an education on, because it's based on like I almost like appreciate the educational aspects of like, we're gonna lay all of this out for you dumb American Scott, versus like working as a narrative unit. Because like there's obviously, it's not 3-act structure. It's not that, because you got to break it into like 10 different parts.
That was my main takeaway in my notes is that it felt the plot and characterization felt textbook. And that's really, but also like I appreciate it, but also it's to its detriment because there's just I say this very sparsely, but this is one of those things that I think would benefit from an actual like prestige television series, like Game of Thrones, except with a better ending.
Right. It's just at the time TV was so low budget.
Yeah, it
And
would have
then
been
this
dorky.
movie, I mean, I wouldn't call it low budget, but like they did a lot with relatively little, I feel like,
Sure.
because it's not a Hollywood necessarily or it's like shot in Ireland, and what was it, Ardmore Studios. So yeah, it's not like Paramount made this or something. It's not
But
gonna
it
have.
still looks cool. It still has that kind of fuzziness to it that you want from an 80s fantasy movie. With
Well,
like
and you know what John Boorman, the director, what he attributes that to. I'm also going to be giving information from the documentary, which has a couple different made names actually made on this. He said part of it is the lighting and the fuzziness. That he's like, Ireland is so goddamn humid, and we were shooting on location. That's just how it looked
yeah,
like
that's good though.
with camera lighting. Also, apparently, they use green filters over a lot of the lighting. They didn't just use natural lighting in the outdoor scenes, like, but they use like green filters to give it that like ethereal, almost Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion sort of green.
It's a very effective, and I love that aspect. Like it's the art direction is straight out of like covers for old D&D handbooks and stuff and just 80s kind of like it is very early 80s and I like how so many scenes are set to where the lighting makes the armor gleam and stand out in
Oh,
every scene.
constantly.
It looks cool as hell.
There is that thing where it's an interesting mix, and I think it works for the film. Is like so much of it is gritty because it's on location, and
Yeah.
must have been a pain to shoot. I was hearing the actors talk about like those were real suits of armor.
Yeah, walking around like that all day would suck.
Yeah, and he's like, you couldn't take it off for lunch because like that's why they had like pages and squires because that stuff takes like an hour to get in and out
Yeah.
of. So they were just like, imagine just like eating a bologna sandwich and there's like, like you're the Tin Man and just like squeaking all over the place, dude. It's got to be terrible. You got to move around, and there's things like you can move around in medieval armor more than you think. Like you could sprint in medieval armor. You can look at video. I actually a large chunk of my YouTube recommendations is like history videos, and like I subscribe to stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like it's you could actually like sprint, in that sort of armor. And it's really interesting because combat was almost more of a test of endurance. It was just like you were constantly getting bruised and banged up until somebody was like knocked down or just like out for the count. But depending on the quality of your armor, of course. But no, it's really interesting. He has that juxtaposition. It works really well of like all these like gritty outdoor scenes, but also like constantly polishing, which must have been hard, pain in the ass between shots, constantly polishing the armor. We'll get to it. Camelot is cool looking because it contrasts. Like I've never seen Camelot depicted so much as like a magical fortress. Normally it's kind of just like a big castle.
Yeah.
And this it almost seems like it's constructed out of like a magical otherworldly material. Like even the castle itself is gleaming. um so he does that very well. And
Here's my problem with the film. Mainly is in at least the first half of the film is the characterization of Arthur himself. I don't think I really like how fast he gets into things and his urge to become the king.
the first scene we see is him is him pulling the sword from the stone.
Yeah, and if you've read any of the books or anything like that, you know that he grows up with that guy and his son, his which they consider his stepbrother, and him and his stepbrother have beef, and they fight a lot, and there's a lot of good story in there of him coming of age and kind of yeah, Kay, that's his name, the stepbrother, and like he deals with a lot of bullshit, and you get a lot of him, not just being some kid who just feels entitled or wants to be king. I'm not saying he feels entitled, but I'm saying like a lot of the interesting part of Arthur is that him training with Merlin at an early age and Merlin teaching him facts and fables of life and things that kind of a humble king would need to learn. And you get that even in the Disney movie, which I
Yes.
grew up with, but it's in the Once a Future King, and it's hard not to compare this movie to that book when it's.
No, that's like the most popular 20th century depiction of like what we just said is like Sword and Stone for kids, and then like Once and Future King for like
Yeah.
adolescents and adults.
But he really needed to be more doe-eyed, a little bit more naive, and a little more resistant to being the king at first. Uh, that's my main issue, and it kind of threw me off with him pulling the sword, and then suddenly he's like, "Yeah, let's do this. I'm ready to rock." And it's like, I don't know if he should have been that quick to be trying to be king,
Yeah, this is
personally.
very much the, like I said, like the mythological. I mean, Arthur is basically a myth. He might be loosely based on some real person, but like that sort of mythic version of the king. I think part of the problem, maybe, this was John Boorman's dream project his whole life. He was big in Arthurian myth. He would, like, as a kid, play with like figurines and like
Yeah.
retell the Arthur myth, that sort of thing. So he has such reverence for the source material, like that can actually hurt you in adapting that source material for a wide audience. And again, even though this movie, it's a long movie, it's like 2.5 hours, but like covering all of the Arthur legends in one movie is like impossible. And it
Yeah.
would have worked
Yeah.
better as a prestige TV series, but prestige TV did not exist back then.
I know.
If you wanted to do it, it would look like it would be like on a Xena budget or something. And there have
Yeah.
been like Arthur and like Merlin and stuff TV series over the years, of course. But um maybe that is his problem, is he's like so into the idea of adapting the myths as it is, he doesn't do enough of an adaptation so it could feel almost like transcription, like cinematic transcription of the myths, you know. And again, like there's no room for characterization. Like it feels like the movie presupposes like a certain amount of knowledge on the part of the audience of like you're kind of expected to already know this story
Yeah.
before you go in, which, you know, most people in the English speaking world know the broad strokes of it. I did have an Irish roommate, like from Ireland, and like even grew up in London largely, who like didn't know who King Arthur was, and it was baffling to me. That's just a side note. And then I had another roommate who was Spanish and didn't even speak English and was like, "What the hell are you talking? Like,
Does
what?
he
How
know
do
who
you?"
Robin Hood is?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't ask, but it was really weird. It was very, and she wasn't dumb, but she
That's
was like,
strange because that's
yeah.
like only
I
like
mean,
almost like second to Jesus in like
no,
identifiable
even
legends.
like my roommate didn't speak English. She was like, "He's the most famous king in the world." Like, what are you talking? That's like if you and I didn't know who George Washington was. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, he was a real person. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, what?
Yeah,
How did you miss this?
that's so bizarre.
So she would be very confused by this movie, I guess. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Also, yeah, Arthur, I like him more in the second half, more of the in-game older Arthur. That works for me. But like
I gotta give it to Nigel Terry, and like he does a good job depicting Arthur at multiple ages, you know, and it's bold to do that.
kinda, yeah. I
Kinda.
don't
I
know.
mean,
It's not
he
my
does the
choice
best
for
he
the
can.
character. I think he needs to be a little more dashing. And at the first half, he comes off more like a crusty Twitch streamer or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying.
But that's just nitpicking, maybe. I don't know. He's
One of
just
the
a.
interesting thing about this movie is like this is like a who's who of UK cinema. I know it's shot in Ireland, but like um because it's like all these stage actors, and then which is interesting. I wonder if that's like if that was convenience or budget or what that was. But it's like all these people like Liam Neeson, who I'm really bad at recognizing actors if they're in makeup sometimes. So like I didn't even realize it was Liam Neeson until later. Like he shows up in this, Patrick Stewart shows up with this, like Nigel Terry, Helen Mirren, like they were all just stage actors at the time. Oh, so this like launched the careers of multiple actors who are like still working today, which is
Yeah.
crazy. You know, this movie's over 40 years old. Um, we got Frank Drebin Jr. in this movie.
Did you see The Green Knight from a few years
No,
ago?
I need to
Yeah,
because I know that's right up my alley.
that's a great movie.
Yeah, I
Uh,
didn't have time to watch it before this.
Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, but because I remember that story and I was like, oh, cool. There's a kind of almost like an art house version of a Arthur adjacent story. So
Yeah,
I
which
would,
is really it's really odd that I never heard like the story of the Green Knight until like later, like much later, until like the last year or something. I saw the Fisher King with Robin Williams, but I don't think that has anything to do with this movie.
what? No, I remember reading Gawain and the Green Knight in 12th grade, I think, English,
Hmm.
as opposed to 10th grade. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend that. Also, this is one of those movies where if a character would have just jerked off, it would have nothing would have happened because
Oh, yeah.
multiple times, but also like Arthur's father at the beginning, using magic to sexually assault a woman, basically.
Yeah, no, I it just made me think of Revenge of the Nerds. Like he just
Yeah,
raped by deception, sort of.
Merlin just goes along with it. What, first of all, what does Merlin have to gain in any of this?
Yeah, that's sort of. I mean, I know he's living. So it depends on the depiction. He's either aging backwards, or in T.H. White, he's like living backwards through history. It's not that he like communes with the spirits like in this movie and kind of sees possible futures. It's like he's already lived through everything.
Yeah,
It's like weird predestination, interesting kind of philosophically. But the I prefer that version.
I like the anachronistic version in the Disney one where he's like been to the future and like
Uh,
he's wearing like,
yeah.
80s clothes or whatever, or
Oh no,
70s
no, no. He's
clothes.
like talking about going to Bermuda and stuff.
Yeah.
I really like that one too. Um, but there's this. I think Hitler's referenced in the Once and Future King. Like he mentions like some Austrian like failed artists or something. It's like a Hitler art school joke. Um, no, and I do. Here's the thing: Merlin's my favorite character in this movie
Yeah,
for
he's
sure.
cool.
He's I really like whoever that actor is who portrays him. Nicol Williamson. He does great. He is almost anachronistic. He's just like over shit constantly because he has like precognition. So he's like waiting for everybody to catch up, and he's clearly
Yeah.
like the smartest and most powerful person. Also, his design, he's very much more druid. He's basically because like Merlin's basically like an old Celtic druid, but like more modernized for like the early and middle ages, I guess, or whatever. Um, and but it is like what do you have to gain by like doing this like weird dragon's breath thing? So like Arthur can Uther can rape and then become Arthur, who later gets raped by his like half sister. It's really weird, dude.
Yeah.
And this is my problem with European politics. It's all just incest, all that. Um, but it's no Merlin's great. But everybody should have jerked off. Also, it's like I don't know. It's a weird thing where like not Uther, but the whatever Duke that he's like having a feud with. He like, hey, watch my sexy wife do the most like white person boring dance in front of everybody. And then he's just like, I haven't seen a woman in months. I must have her. Like, and that's which it's always crazy to me, like how even with old, not just in this, but in old stories in general, it's all this like people getting married after 2 weeks because they just see someone who they find mildly attractive and they're like, yeah, this is good enough. Um, I don't know. I know courtship was different, but at least like make sure they have a bunch of like goats for dowry or something. I don't know. But
Now, another issue I have with this movie is Lancelot. And he's fine, but the problem is I do like that battle he has with Arthur because then finally Arthur finds humility after using Excalibur to strike him down. That's a very striking image, if you will. But the problem is we don't get enough from Lancelot either, backstory wise. We don't see him. Um, I don't know. We
So
get so much more of Lancelot in the books, and I feel like his stuff with Guinevere was pushed really fast. Like as soon as he meets Guinevere, he's already setting up the affair immediately. And it's like, well, they barely even discuss two words. This is very superficial and feels
no, it's absolutely feels forced for the plot. It also seems out of character for Lance. Like I feel like if you're gonna
that's
portray
why they
this
need to develop him
character,
more before they set up the which I didn't
if
even
you're
know
gonna
they would be
portray
covering
him
in
as this
this.
like lawful good paladin, absolutely like best morals, like you have to show that corruption.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it feels out of character. That
very
is the problem.
much.
It's rushed. Um, and again, jerk off. I don't know. Uh, but I was reading like Lancelot. So the thing with Arthurian legend, it's like a lot of these like Greek myths. Like each telling of it iterates upon the last, and you have all these different like oral traditions and stuff that sometimes contradict each other. Lancelot is like a later edition that was basically like a fanfic self-insert character of like I'm gonna have the most perfect knight who's the most perfect and goodest knight of them all. Like that's Lancelot. So to the
But they
point where
could have made him way more interesting. Have this perfect night and have him be like truly haunted by his choice to try and be with Guinevere. Have him because they should have kind of focused a bit more on if they could have. They don't have much runtime, but to have them looking for the Grail earlier and have Lancelot's failure when he's unable to procure the cup, which would add to his failure and the weight on his back, and kind of just show him going through moral trials. Yeah, it just felt like so out of place, just
he
immediately,
doesn't
like
he
the
doesn't
first
seem to
scene.
care until he gets caught either.
Yeah.
Like he seems to just be kind of like, yeah, I'm banging my best friends and my king's wife. What are you gonna do about it? I'm just,
Build up
she,
his friendship between Arthur too, so like the it feels more devastating when he does get with Guinevere. Should have waited, kind of built the tension between him and her in different scenes around Arthur, kind of have that tension become more and more palatable. And I think that could have been a strong subplot. But
there's no time for subplot in this movie.
yeah,
This movie is actually like a real plot cell movie. If you go
yeah.
actually, like it really just wants to like hit the highlight.
Opposite of our last episode.
Yeah, dude, it is definitely the anti-Solaris. I guess that's one weird way to characterize.
Yeah. I'm gonna put
Like
that
it's
on your
all just like
headstone.
stuff happening, not a ton of build up, like and then this happens, and then this happens. It is almost like Merlin's just like narrating the events to you at times, which isn't to say there aren't cool visuals and stuff, but like there's not a lot of ebb and flow, is what I'm saying. The pacing is very linear in that sense, even
Yeah.
from scene to scene and within the scenes. You know,
I do like my favorite aspect of the film though is Percival going after the cup of Christ. That is like classic fantasy. Just it's just I like seeing the trials he goes through. It's very weird and magic and ethereal and all in his head. And that's like a classic trial in a way that I'd love to see outside of the silliness of like Monty Python or other stuff, Last Crusade, or just that is the kind of search for the Holy Grail I've wanted to see on film. And Percival somehow is more interesting to me than Arthur or Lancelot in this
yeah,
kind of section of the film.
he is because there's pretty big tonal shift. It's going back to the whole plot cell thing. It is kind of randomly like Arthur's just, his queen, he gets cucked. It's like he gets cucked. He's like, we got to find the Holy Grail. Like, that's kind of with no explanation. I'm like, wait, why do you have to find the Holy Grail? He's like, because it's holy. What do you mean? Wait, it's the, uh, and even that was a later addition. Like, the Holy
Yeah.
Grail, it's not really mentioned. Like, yeah, there's a cup at the Last Supper, but like, it's not really talked about in the Bible. It's just like, here's a cup, um, which is then got conflated with the cup that like caught his blood or whatever. I don't know. But
I feel like this could have been like a trilogy of films. Like, okay, we're gonna show more of his backstory. The middle part of the movie will be him pulling the sword. Have a more like fill in the town and people trying and like just the culture surrounding the sword and the stone. Have him
I guess
pull it. Have him become an. And then towards the end is more the Lancelot introduction and then maybe the first search for the Grail. Don't introduce Mordred until like the end of the second movie and then have Mordred be the final force in like the third movie in a trilogy. I could see it in my
yeah,
mind.
but I know what you're saying, but that's not going to happen. Also,
Yeah.
part of the problem we talk about there being like a lack of tension or a lack of buildup. But part of the problem is like you already know the beats of the story when you go into it because it's based on a legend. It's not like this is an adaptation of a book that you may or may not have read. Even if you haven't read the other adaptations, unless you're my Irish roommate for some reason, the like you know the story or the broad strokes of it. I didn't know all of it. I didn't know, like, I knew vaguely who Morgan Le Fay was. I didn't know like all that happened with her and weird incest
I
plots
would
and
argue most people just know about the Sword and the Stone and the Holy Grail and maybe Lancelot. And
yeah,
that's, I mean,
Lancelot and
really
Guinevere.
the average
No, I
person
mean
here.
there's definitely room to explore there, at least for Americans, who are less familiar with it, especially
Yeah.
nowadays.
Like The Green Knight, go check out that movie. Try to think of what I haven't seen many serious uh King Arthur movies. I've seen it parodied in cartoons I grew up watching all the time. I did pull the sword, but I was unworthy. We didn't do that when we were at Magic Kingdom, but there is a sword in the stone that you can try and pull, and sometimes it will come out for people that are worthy. And by that, I mean there's a cast member in a tower somewhere with a remote control.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying it's not actually a magical sword? Is that what I'm
No,
glad
I'm not saying I'm saying
glad you
it's not like
explained.
randomized in like in the base or something. There's
So they can
someone
just
who
like
like
racially profile whoever they
yeah.
want. Are you not Anglo enough?
Usually it's like an old lady or like a little kid or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, something
The
fun.
big buff annoying manly guy who goes up to do it is not going to pull it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's why you didn't get it because you're big, buff, and manly. Um,
It's weird that he like pulls the sword out of the stone and then he puts it back. He's like, "Oops, now, here I'll pull it again just to make
yeah.
sure."
And then he's like, well, it's like, well, why'd you pull it in the first place? You know, it's also a weird thing. I know they make the joke of in Monty Python of like strange women and lying in ponds distributing swords is not a method for elections or whatever they say. Which I appreciate that whole skit of the movie a lot more as an adult. But it is one of these things like Uther just like randomly throws a sword in there, and then Merlin's like, all right, whoever pulls the sword is going to be king. It's like, well, who makes this decision, Merlin? Like, who are you talking for? I don't know. Um, there are some interesting things in this movie that I think adds to it. Like, basically, Merlin is like all the old gods are dying in the way of Christianization. He keeps referencing that. That's an interesting way of putting it. Um, I also going back to that like Percival subplot, the idea, and this is another thing of I don't know how prominently this is displayed in the original myths, but it's another part of like the sort of and this is part of the Fisher King too myth is like the propaganda that the land is the king is the land. Like as the king gets sick, the land gets sick.
Yeah.
Um, which I don't know, it kind of sounds like annoying to me. It's like, king got the flu, so there's no crops. Shit. It's like, or should we just like put the king in a bubble and have him like go around? Like then it's like, well, don't go into battle, Arthur. You're kind of screwing over everybody for your own ego if that's a problem. If nobody can harvest their carrots. It's a weird thing. But
We
it does
don't
get
get we don't get enough of like of Arthur's half sister kind of she gets tested morally, but like we don't get a full descent. There's no time for it. So by the time she's like ready to give birth to Mordred and all that, it's like, okay, what's your why are you so okay, fuck
yeah,
it.
because she kind of just shows up and she's already pretty much evil. Like she's already pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I read it, in far as the movie, so far as the movie goes, is like she just had a beef against Arthur, but for even though he didn't do anything to her,
Yeah.
it was Arthur's dad who assaulted her mom, so she assaulted him. It's like that doesn't make any sense, Helen Mirren.
Yeah. Stylistically though, it's badass. Like when the birth of Mordred, all that, it's like you feel the stakes at least in that moment of like, oh shit, something evil has spawned into this world. They did a good job with
No, they did a good job. Mordred
execution of
does seem
that.
like a piece. His armor's cool.
Yeah.
It looks like a Dark Souls armor. It looks like something
Yeah.
you find in Dark Souls. It's so extra. It's really cool, and that's something I've seen like made and parodied and done. I think freaking Adam from MythBusters made his own version of the armor. um but that's something that really like elevates it. That's it. I mean, it's like video game boss armor. At the end of the day, he's like, now you got to fight me with my gold armor, which makes
Yeah.
no sense in terms of like structural integrity. It's a whole
The
thing.
last
By
yeah.
the way, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna double check real quick. Arthur's mother, who you see her get assaulted, and you see her like naked, like you see her breasts in this movie. I'm pretty sure that's John Boorman's daughter that
Oh no.
he was just like, and I think they were not a fan. Like I know they're like kids, um, and she was like, yeah, it was really odd. And then apparently the
That's
actor
creepy.
who played Uther, they have the scenes where he's thrusting away in full armor, which is a
Which
hell of
is how am I supposed to take that seriously?
it's so funny. It's so
Yeah.
insane. It's like that dude's so horny. All he did was rip off his codpiece. He couldn't even. Imagine you want to bang your wife and you have to call your squire in for an hour. Talk about foreplay to like disassemble your whole suit of armor at the time while you're just sitting there like rock hard, like it goes ding against the inside of your armor. But apparently, like, we just get his shot. So there was like an hour for the close up where he was just like humping this cushion, of to like bang this cushion in full armor, dripping sweat, dude. And that was like probably the first movie he ever made. One of those things, like when you think about this is before intimacy coordinators, so like any of these behind the scenes sex scenes are like so funny and unerotic out of context, dude. So crazy. Boorman was, I mean, the guy made Zardoz, I realized, like, and Deliverance, all very different movies.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
He's got range. I hate respect, And I mean, the guy's a good director. Like, our criticisms of the movie are mainly that he tried to cram too much. Like, I don't think for the most part, the direction of this movie, like, you can squabble and be like, well, I would have changed this and this, but like, the fact that he was able to put this movie together, given the resources he had,
Yeah,
is
that's cool.
impressive.
But
And like, because he had this stuff like for the battle scene, like at the whatever the last part is, Cadron, I don't know, where like he didn't have enough actors or extras for the night, so he would have the knights like fall down, get cut down, crawl under the camera, and like rejoin the scene. So he would just like recycle the same actors
okay,
nights over and over, stuff like that.
that's
So
cool.
and then also apparently, he just sounds like a piece of work, not in even a terrible way, but he would have like the rehearsed action for the fight scenes and then he would keep rolling, and so the actors would have to like improv action and like be like they would be like rougher because it's not like rehearsed or anything, and he was more interested in catching that action of the
Oh
actors
man.
just like beating the shit out of each other.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, hell yeah, it is. Well, they got armor on. It's fine. They got real armor.
Well, he knows how to capture atmosphere. That's for sure. Like that, the image of that final battle is striking, especially with the sunset and when Arthur and Mordred like kill each other at the same time and stuff. That is really cool imagery.
It's one of those. I get a feeling sometimes when I watch movies, and this is one of them, where I'm like, this author has had this shot in his head for 20 years.
Yeah,
Like he has wanted to shoot
it
this
is one of those moments.
specific scene, this specific angle with this lighting for his whole life, and
Same
his
for
whole
that
career.
shot of Lancelot in full armor rested against a tree in that like sparkling ethereal meadow. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah,
No,
fucking aura farming, as they say now.
yeah. Which that's another thing. I think the actors were like on some blanket and that, but they were actually out in the woods, so they were getting like bit by ants the whole time they were filming that scene.
That
So like,
sucks.
yeah, they getting
No, I
ant.
wasn't talking about when he was having sex. I was just saying when he's just resting.
Are you
And
talking about
then,
when they first meet him and he's just like there, or when he's just resting because he keeps like wandering around and doing this stuff?
yeah, he's just wandering around. But
Yeah,
it's
no,
just
there's
a
a lot of
nice
that.
shot of the forest. But I like, see, like I said, like Percival's the most interesting because like even at the end, I was engaged with like him being the one who's supposed to throw Excalibur into the water, and he like can't do it. He can't bring himself to do it. Like I don't know. Percival just like as soon as it start focusing more on him, I'm like, yeah, yeah. Really, to me, the second half of the movie was I was able to get past all of my problems with the story and characterization, and like really enjoy the a knight kind of tale with Percival and the trials and tribulations, and
Right.
like the backdrop being Arthur aging and dying and like everything about Camelot being soured. That's yeah, I like that escalation a lot.
No, because the first half is just like greatest hits.
Yeah,
And then Arthur needed to be a more interesting
it's
character.
kind of
So
like
Last Supper or
Last Temptation of
Last Temptation
Christ,
of Christ. No, it's like the first half is like the greatest hits of Jesus, and then the second half stuff gets more interesting. No, it's one of those.
which out of nowhere, Parker said her coworker watched that episode and he said to tell me that he enjoyed it. I was like, whoa. Okay, thanks. I didn't know you had any awareness of this show, but cool.
Yeah, it's thank you. But no, this movie. I mean, I'm glad this movie was made, and this is like a Gen Xers. Like I had a roommate who was really big into like the sort of like 80s fantasy sword and sorcery, a bit older, and like I mean, I think he had an Excalibur poster in his room.
Yeah, this is a James Rolfe kind of movie.
Yeah, dude. This is hold on. Give me 2 seconds. I forgot to get something.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
This is like a triple G. A triple oh shit.
I have to get my Conan sword for this,
Yeah,
which is blurred
Conan.
out. But
Conan versus Lancelot. Let's see
now
that
that's
fight.
something we gotta see, dude. Um,
Let's
no, this is my old
how do we
room.
not know the end of it is actually a dildo with the way it's blurred out?
Yeah, that's actually
You have
this
to hold it in front of you like goddamn Aragorn. Yeah.
like this.
But this is a triple G movie. And what I mean by that is it's a Gen X, Gen Y movie, like late Gen X, early Gen Y. And what I mean by triple G is because people like Mike Matei and James Rolfe are like Gen Y. They don't shut up about the three Gs: Gremlins, Ghostbusters, and the Goonies, because that's their entire childhood and that represents them as a person culturally. And so this is like one of those movies people like that would adore. And I don't, it's a cool movie.
If you didn't listen in before Lord of the Rings, which apparently they tried to adapt Lord of the Rings first, and I'm glad they did. He would have tried to cram that in the whole one movie, and that would have been Lord of the Rings. It would have been like this, paced like this, only with no. And Lord of the Rings, unless you've read the books, you're not going to know who like Sauron is. It's not like King Arthur where everybody has a
Yeah.
familiarity with it. Um, but the it's a weird thing. It's like, that's all they had. And now we have so many other options for fantasy. I mean, we have Game of Thrones, we have Lord of the Rings, but that's what you had in the 80s. That's why people don't shut up about this movie. If you were a kid into Sword and Sorcery,
Yeah, if I was 12 years old in 1981,
I would be all over
every
this.
weekend.
Yeah. I would be like, Mom, can we see this for a fifth time? Like that's and they would drop me off at the mall and then
Also, like,
get drunk and because they're 80s
but also it was rated R, so it was probably more of like 14, 15 year
Oh,
olds.
and that's the thing that for some reason I went into this movie thinking it was like some PG family film, and
Then
then
it opens with
Uther,
sexual assault. Yeah.
yeah, and then it opens with sexual assault. I was like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. Why is Merlin enabling this? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, dude, Merlin's like an evil wingman, dude. He's kind of
I was honestly expecting more like creatures and dragons and shit. We don't
yeah,
really
me
get
too.
much of
But
that at
I
all.
kind of appreciate how grounded it is, especially because they really wanted to do all the special effects in camera, which makes it
Yeah.
age way better that they're not having like crappy 80s
Little
like
fireballs flying around and stuff.
yeah, like the where it's like the old Narnia movie where they're like
Oh
hand
man.
drawing stuff on there, like on the cells. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like okay, that's
That's I appreciate like yeah, the set design when Merlin and the stepsister are in that crystal cavern. That's the shit.
yeah, that's good. It's good stuff.
Did you ever play that
Donkey Kong 64,
no, it
the
was
crystal
that
level.
game, arcade game where it's the whole game's a quick time event.
Oh yeah, Dragon Square or what?
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
not Dragon Quest, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Dragon's Lair, is that it?
Dragon's Lair, Dragon's Lair. Yeah, yeah,
That's my
yeah.
shit.
Okay. Is that it? That's all you had to say?
No, I was just thinking like I was just thinking about we have so many fantasy games, but we don't have many like Knights of the Round Table kind of stuff.
It's one of those things I feel like as fantasy has become more mainstreamed, like it sidelined that like traditional historical medieval
Yeah.
aesthetic is what it does. Like you still have that, but that's more niche. I mean,
That's why I
there's
appreciate the aesthetics of Oblivion versus like other games like Skyrim or Dark Souls. Like it kind of has that more, I don't know.
classic, it's we're veering out of movies here, but it has that more like classic fantasy aesthetic. And that was intentional for them. Also, that's a bunch of like 80s people who made that game. Like the
Yeah.
people who made that game made
Yeah, for
watched this
sure.
movie growing up. But the and that was an attempt to make it more mainstream and palatable to an audience, because Morrowind is like weird in a good way. I love it. But like the Lord of the Rings movies were like coming out while that was being made. But I mean, you do have stuff now. You have in terms of you have like different like Mountain Blade and some other games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 just came out. That's very historical. That's like straight up like set in 14th century Bohemia or something. I haven't played them. I don't have the time, but I would like to. But you have seen a sidelining of that like more traditional aesthetic in like replacing it with like fantasy and this sort of like pan-European fantasy aesthetic, where it's like borrowing from a bunch of different culture. I mean, you mentioned Dark Souls. That's straight up like a Japanese interpretation of Western fantasy. That's
Yeah.
its own thing, which is why it's so cool. But it is kind of nice to see like this is gonna sound weird, but like how like specifically British and almost like nationalistic this is. But like having, a myth like based so much in the history of one country is while still having the influence of like French and Roman and Gaelic, like all these different things. Like when Merlin's speaking his magic words, he's just talking Gaelic. Like that's straight up what it is, in this movie. But it is interesting, and I do appreciate like the groundedness of this, especially in this day and age.
Totally. Now, once again, if they make a multi-season prestige King Arthur show, I'll be there. Just don't make it annoyingly gritty and grim dark. I want it to be,
No, this movie at least tries to balance those elements, like,
yeah,
and it escalates the grim dark. Not even grim dark, just grim.
yeah, no, but just like I don't know. I
But
feel like
don't
there's,
make it Game of Thrones.
yeah, don't
That's
make it Game of Thrones. Exactly. Just how like Prince Caspian tried to be Narnia. You don't do that.
You mean how it tried to be Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, how it tried to be Lord of the Rings. Let Lord of the Rings be the Lord of the Rings. You fucked up Narnia.
I
Just
mean,
like
well, we'll see with Greta Gerwig's new adaptation.
we'll see. But yeah, but yeah, yeah. Don't if you make a king if the future director of Arthur, A Knight's Tale, a Netflix original series is listening to this, do not make it Game of Thrones, make it your own thing. Anyway, final thoughts on Excalibur.
I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll ever see this movie again. I feel like I understand my Gen X cohorts better. And like if you're a fan of fantasy, this is which I am. I'm not the biggest, but I am more of a sci-fi guy if we're gonna do that connection. But like this is essential viewing for the genre.
Yeah, at least one time you should watch this
And
movie.
because there's not a ton of like fantasy still like it's more mainstream than ever, but I feel like it's still kind of niche at least in terms of cinema. Like in
When it
terms
comes
of
to
like
like hard fantasy.
yeah, high fantasy. I mean, I guess maybe this is low fantasy because it's set in our own world. It's not like a completely fictional, but
Yeah,
like
but like
even stuff like the D&D movie underperformed, even though that's good. Arguably the best game adaptation. Um, but in D&D is like way more mainstream than ever. But like other than Lord of the Rings, like not a lot of like big budget things. It's that and Game of Thrones, really.
yeah.
And that's part of it's just like it's so damn expensive to do the genre. Even sci-fi, you can do a lower budget, like Black Mirror sort of thing, but
Yeah.
relatively lower budget.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, everybody. If you want to support us, there are many avenues to do that. I say this every week, but got to keep hammering it in. Find an episode of The Harbor that you really like, of a movie that you and maybe another friend has already seen, and be like, hey, we just watched this movie. This is a good episode on that we just watched. Because we have over 185 Harbor episodes. So maybe share the love. I have a book for sale if you want to support us monetarily. You can follow Scott K Comedy on Instagram. You can follow me at the Morning Line. Other than that, let's see what we're doing next week. I believe it's a Scott choice. Let's see
Is it
here.
all right? I unblurred it so people can see my Atlantean sword. And that's not
Yes,
a euphemism either.
next week on the Harbor is Last Tango in Paris.
That's
So,
definitely a U.
you sure?
Last Tango in Paris? I thought it was. I don't know. I'm excited for it anyway.
Okay, well, either way, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.